The first scream tore through Blackthorne Hall before breakfast, which was rude because breakfast had not yet done anything to deserve it. Lady Prunella came running from the Rose Court, shouting that the lions ate her engagement ribbon and possibly her future. A footman dropped a crate of oranges, and Titan decided the emergency had provided a buffet. By the time the porridge arrived, the story had gained blood, broken bones, and one entirely invented severed hand. The truth was less fatal, but much worse for royal dignity. Atlas had pinned Lady Prunella's white courtship ribbon beneath one enormous paw. Titan had removed the lace train from her gown with the concentration of a seamstress correcting bad work. Neither lion had touched her skin. They never did. They merely destroyed every visible sign that a woman intended to marry Alpha King Everard Blackthorne. Lady Prunella was the 13th candidate in 18 months. She left with an intact body, a ruined hem, and several forceful opinions about royal animal management. Behind her carriage, Titan sat among the fallen oranges and watched her depart with the serene satisfaction of a priest concluding a ceremony. The king stood on the front steps in a black morning coat. His dark hair had not yet been disciplined, although the rest of him looked carved from authority. He surveyed the torn ribbon, the fleeing carriage, and the orange peel stuck to Titan's mane. His wolf pressed restlessly beneath his skin. The beast had disliked every courtship presentation. Atlas and Titan, bonded to the royal wolf since cubhood, treated that dislike as a military command. Everard had explained this to the council. The council had explained that kings were expected to control their feelings, their wolves, and any lions consuming ceremonial textiles before breakfast. Neither explanation had improved matters. In the lower laundry, Linnea Bell knew none of this. She was sorting sheets by stain, which offered fewer surprises than royalty. Blood went into cold water. Wine received salt. Mud required patience. Noble perfume required opening every window and forgiving no one. Linnea was 24, poor and excellent at making worn linen look respectable. She considered all three facts permanent. Her brown hair stayed pinned beneath a plain cap. Her gray dress had been mended so neatly that the repairs looked almost intentional. She was also a low-ranked she-wolf whose shift produced a small russet animal with no impressive qualities beyond clean paws. In a pack that admired size, speed, and dramatic entrances, Linnea's wolf inspired very little conversation. Linnea preferred it that way. The laundry door banged open. Cook Barda filled the doorway, dough on both elbows and terror in her eyes. "Do not run," the cook warned. Mrs. Crowell, the housekeeper, appeared behind her. She clutched her ring of keys like a religious object and added that screaming would only encourage them. A younger maid climbed onto the folding table. From that secure position, she advised Linnea to pray. Linnea lowered the royal pillowcase she was examining. For the lions or myself? The answer arrived as two black-maned bodies crashed through the open doorway. Atlas entered first. His shoulders reached Linnea's waist, and his heavy paws made the stone floor seem temporary. Titan followed with orange pulp on his whiskers and half a white ribbon hanging from his mouth. Steam drifted from the wash vats. Wet linen, lye soap, and hot stone filled the room. Beneath those smells came the dry, wild scent of lion fur. Every servant stopped breathing. Atlas looked at Linnea. His golden eyes widened. His nostrils moved once, then again. Something in his great body changed. The dangerous stiffness vanished from his shoulders. Linnea had one moment to wonder whether lions looked pleased before eating someone. Atlas crossed the laundry and lowered his massive head. Instead of opening his jaws, he pressed his forehead against her hip. A rumbling sigh traveled through her skirts and into her bones. Titan spat out the ribbon. He shoved his brother aside, buried his face in Linnea's apron, and inhaled so enthusiastically that the fabric pulled tight around her waist. The maid on the table whispered a prayer anyway. It sounded disappointed by the lack of death. Linnea stared down at two royal terrors behaving like oversized house cats. Atlas leaned harder. Titan attempted to climb into a lap that did not exist because Linnea was still standing. She set aside the pillowcase and scratched beneath his chin. Titan collapsed onto the floor with all four paws in the air. Laughter escaped her before caution could catch it. The sound was rusty, startled, and far too loud in the silent laundry. Someone moved in the doorway. Alpha King Everard stood behind Cook Barda. He filled the narrow entrance without effort. His eyes were a colder gold than the lion's, framed by a face that made several maids forget how knees worked. Linnea had seen him only at a distance. Up close, he looked younger than the statues and more tired than the official portraits. A thin scar crossed one eyebrow. His expression suggested that the morning had personally offended him. He looked from Atlas to Titan, then to Linnea's hand buried in Titan's mane. "How do they know you?" the king asked. Linnea's fingers stopped. "They do not, your majesty." Atlas objected by wrapping one foreleg around her ankle. Everard watched the movement. His wolf, agitated since dawn, settled with such sudden relief that the king almost swayed. He covered the reaction by folding his arms. "That is Atlas," he explained. "The creature displaying his stomach without shame is Titan." Titan rolled farther and struck a basket with one paw. 3 folded sheets slid onto his face. He remained there, hidden beneath linen, apparently satisfied with the arrangement. Linnea pulled one sheet away. "He appears very dangerous." The corner of Everard's mouth moved. It did not become a smile, but it showed knowledge of the process. The lions refused to leave without her. Everard tried a formal command. Atlas looked toward a window. The royal beast keeper offered dried meat. Titan accepted the meat, swallowed it, and returned to Linnea. Captain Ormond tried both authority and a broom. Neither survived contact with Atlas's stare. At last, Everard asked Linnea to walk into the corridor. The lions followed at once. She walked back into the laundry, and they followed again. After the 4th demonstration, Cook Barda announced that even the council should be able to understand it. Everard summoned Linnea to his study after breakfast. She arrived with soap-reddened hands and the certainty that royal attention never improved a servant's life. His study smelled of cedar, ink, and rain trapped in old stone. Morning light crossed maps pinned along one wall. Everard stood behind a broad desk while Mrs. Crowell waited near the door. Atlas occupied the carpet beside Linnea. Titan had found a tassel on the curtain and was testing its commitment to the crown. Everard offered Linnea a temporary position as personal keeper to the royal lions. The work included daily walks, meals, bathing, and preventing further attacks on courtship fabric. The last duty appeared to cause him private pain. The position came with triple wages and a room above the old kennels. Linnea thought of her mother's medical debts, still recorded in careful columns inside her trunk. "Is this an order, your majesty?" Everard's gaze held hers. "No, I have enough creatures ignoring my orders already." Titan pulled the tassel free. The king closed his eyes for one brief second. Linnea suspected he was counting. "You may refuse," he continued. "Nothing will happen to your laundry position. If you accept, you may leave the new post at any time." The fairness of it unsettled her more than a command would have. Powerful men often called their wishes choices after everyone else had lost the ability to choose. Everard had placed Mrs. Crowell in the room as a witness and stated the wages before asking for an answer. Linnea looked at Atlas. He met her eyes with grave expectation. Titan planted one paw on her shoe and stared at Everard until the king understood the vote. "I accept for 2 weeks," she decided. "After that, we review whether the lions have improved." Everard glanced at Titan. "Should my own improvement be included?" The question sounded almost serious. Linnea risked an answer. "That would require separate wages." Mrs. Crowell made a small choking sound near the door. Everard's near smile returned, warmer this time. "Agreed, Miss Bell." Her first official duty began 20 minutes later when Titan stole the king's riding glove. He carried it through the central hall, past 2 guards, beneath a serving cart, and directly into a council meeting. Linnea pursued him with a leather lead in one hand and the remains of her dignity in the other. The council chamber doors stood open. Inside, 12 elders surrounded a table covered in border reports. Everard sat at its head, wearing the calm expression of a man whose mourning could no longer surprise him. Titan walked between the counselors and placed the wet glove at Linnea's feet. Every face turned toward her. Linnea stopped on the threshold. Atlas stopped behind her, then stepped on the back of her skirt. She lurched forward and caught the doorframe. His attention settled on the glove. An impressive recovery. I am sorry, Your Majesty. Linnea picked it up with 2 fingers. He stole it from your dressing room. The king leaned back. A faint light appeared in his eyes. Titan only steals from people he respects. An elderly counselor frowned at the lion. Does he? No, Everard admitted, but the truth reflects poorly on us both. Linnea's laugh escaped as a breath. The king heard it. His attention sharpened as if she had dropped a jewel instead of a damp glove. She curtsied, gathered both lions, and left before her face grew any warmer. Behind her, one counselor asked whether the animal had swallowed Lady Prunella's engagement ribbon. Everard replied that the investigation remained active. During the following week, Linnea learned that Atlas liked order, fresh straw, and having his mane brushed exactly 20 times. On the 21st stroke, he moved away with quiet disapproval. Titan liked warm stones, open doors, and sitting wherever another person intended to stand. He showed no interest in commands delivered from a safe distance. The senior keeper explained that both lions were bonded to Everard's wolf, but had transferred their handling trust to Linnea. Until they accepted her authority beside his, ceremonial appearances required both humans. Everard therefore joined the morning handling sessions as a real duty. Linnea gave the verbal command while he kept his wolf calm and present. Atlas mastered the arrangement immediately. Titan discovered that standing between them forced both handlers to move closer. On the 3rd morning, he placed his enormous body across their marked path and closed his eyes. He understands the exercise, Linnea concluded. Everard stood beside her in the amber stable light. Hay, clean leather, and warm animal breath softened the severity around him. He disagrees with its objective. Linnea stepped left. Titan rolled left. Everard tried the other side, and the lion stretched until one paw blocked that route too. Atlas watched from his station with elder disappointment. At last, Linnea and Everard crossed together. Their shoulders touched as they stepped over Titan's tail. The lion opened one eye, satisfied that cooperation had finally occurred. His training method lacks subtlety, Linnea murmured. Everard glanced at their touching arms. Its results are difficult to dispute. Their daily walks took them through the rose court, where Lady Prunella's ribbon had died. Gardeners now stepped aside with respectful speed. Titan tried to eat one rose, discovered the thorns, and blamed the nearest gardener with a wounded stare. On the 7th morning, the lions ignored their usual path. They pulled toward the oldest part of the royal grounds, where oak roots cracked the paving stones. Everard followed with Linnea half a step behind. Mist still clung beneath the trees. Damp bark, mushrooms, and distant chimney smoke scented the cool air. Ahead stood a cottage wrapped in ivy. Its green door had faded nearly gray, and one shutter hung crooked beside a dark window. Atlas slowed. Titan approached the door and made a low, uncertain sound. His playfulness vanished. He pressed his nose to the wood, breathing deeply. Linnea's chest tightened without warning. Rain against glass, a green door. Her mother's hand closing around hers hard enough to hurt. The memory disappeared before she could hold it. Everard noticed her stillness. What is it? I am not sure. Linnea stared at the door. What was this place? He explained that it had once housed the royal gardener. It had been empty since his mother's final year as Luna Queen. Atlas scratched once at the threshold. Titan suddenly lunged after a rabbit. The lead snapped tight. Linnea's boot caught beneath a root, and the world tipped toward the muddy path. Everard moved before she could cry out. One arm closed around her waist and pulled her against a hard, warm chest. For a breath, she felt the controlled power beneath his coat. Cedar and cold air clung to him. His wolf flashed gold through his eyes, then settled as soon as she regained her balance. Linnea stepped away. She smoothed her skirt, although mud had already made the effort theoretical. "Are you hurt?" His voice had dropped. Only offended. She looked at Titan, who had lost the rabbit and found a leaf. "The responsible party appears unrepentant." Everard's hand remained lifted where her waist had been. He lowered it slowly. Titan has never allowed failure to damage his confidence. They returned to the palace without opening the cottage. Neither spoke about the moment beside the path. Both remembered it with unreasonable accuracy. The next few days settled into a rhythm Linnea had not expected to enjoy. She rose before dawn, fed the lions, and watched Atlas enforce order through disapproving stares. Titan preferred to sleep across the feed room doorway. Every servant had to step over him while he evaluated their balance with one half-open eye. The servants watched her differently now. Some offered friendly advice. Others whispered that the lions had chosen a future Luna from the laundry. Linnea ignored them. Wolves enjoyed hierarchy, prophecy, and gossip. Given sufficient time, they could turn a missing teaspoon into all three. She kept her shoulders straight and completed her work. When a visiting noblewoman ordered her to kneel and repair a loose shoe buckle, Linnea calmly explained that she was holding 2 lion leads. The noblewoman looked at Atlas and reconsidered the importance of the buckle. Everard witnessed the exchange from the gallery. Later, he instructed the court staff that Linnea was a royal animal keeper and must be addressed by name. He did not make a performance of defending her. He simply changed the rule and expected obedience. That quiet respect disturbed Linnea's defenses. She had protected herself for years. She knew how to answer cruelty, avoid pity, and stretch one loaf through 4 meals. Kindness without a hidden price remained more difficult. That evening, Atlas refused to enter the lion house. He carried an old cracked riding glove in his mouth and walked directly toward the library. Titan followed, snuffling along the baseboards. Linnea followed both because experience had taught her that unattended lions produced paperwork. Everard sat at a long table beneath the windows. His sleeves were rolled to his forearms, and several estate accounts lay open before him. Rain tapped softly against the glass. He looked up when Atlas deposited the old glove beside his papers. "That belonged to my mother," he murmured. Atlas moved to a neglected bookcase. Titan pushed his nose beneath the lowest shelf and sneezed. Dust rose in a golden cloud. Linnea knelt to pull him back. Her fingers brushed brittle paper tucked between the shelf and the wall. She drew out a folded letter tied with faded blue thread. The thread broke when she touched it. Everard crouched beside her. He did not take the letter until she offered it. The paper carried the faint odor of dust and lavender. Across the front, a name had been written in a firm, elegant hand. Eleanor Bell. Linnea forgot the lions, the king, and the rain. "That was my mother." Everard opened the letter carefully. His eyes moved across the page, then returned to the beginning. The message came from Luna Queen Elspeth, his mother. It thanked Eleanor for staying through a dangerous winter. It also stated that Blackthorne might have suffered greatly without her courage. Linnea read the words twice. Her mother had told her about thread, medicine, rent, and the danger of trusting charming creditors. She had never mentioned saving a royal household. "There must be another Eleanor Bell," Linnea whispered. Everard pointed to the final line. Queen Elspeth had asked after little Linnea and hoped her fever had eased. The library tilted around her. Titan, sensing grief or perhaps an unattended hand, placed his heavy chin on her knee. Linnea stared at her own name. A forgotten room opened inside her mind, filled with rain, green paint, and her mother's frightened breathing. Everard folded the letter along its old creases. "We will find out what happened." The word we reached somewhere pity never had. Their gazes met across the dust between them. Then Linnea nodded. The investigation began the next morning and immediately offended most of the older servants. Cook Barda became fascinated by a pot of onion soup when Linnea mentioned Eleanor. The former head groom claimed age had weakened his memory. He then recalled every winner of the autumn races since his 12th birthday. Mrs. Crowell reacted worst of all. Her lined face lost color when Linnea showed her Queen Elspeth's letter. "Some dust settles for a reason," the housekeeper warned. Linnea kept the letter tucked safely inside her apron. Dust also settles when nobody cleans. Mrs. Crowell's mouth tightened, but sadness softened her eyes. She explained that Elspeth had issued private orders during her final illness. Certain names were not to be discussed unless the safety of the royal family required it. Linnea asked whether danger had followed her mother. The housekeeper looked toward Atlas. The lion stood in the corridor, watching with a stillness that made lies feel unwise. "Your mother was brave," Mrs. Crowell answered. "Brave people are often in danger before sensible people notice." She walked away before Linnea could ask more. That answer provided no facts, but it changed the question. Eleanor had not hidden her past from shame. She had hidden it because someone had once frightened an otherwise practical woman into silence. Everard opened the private household archives to Linnea. He also assigned Captain Ormond to accompany them because old secrets had already produced one nervous housekeeper and a missing record. Captain Ormond was broad, gray-haired, and deeply suspicious of dust. He sneezed every time they opened a box. Titan began waiting for each sneeze, then answering with one of his own. By the sixth exchange, Atlas left the room. Everard studied a stack of staff ledgers while Linnea searched private expense books. The room smelled of paper, dry leather, and the peppermint drops Ormond used after sneezing. They found Eleanor's name in a list from 15 years earlier. The ink beside it had been scraped away. Only the first letters of a title remained. Compan. The rest had vanished beneath a knife. Everard touched the damaged page. Someone removed this deliberately. Linnea felt cold, despite the close room. "Can you tell when?" The king examined the binding and explained that several pages had been replaced before his reign. He had been 9 when Queen Elspeth died. Soon afterward, the council sent him north for training and safety. When he returned, the household records had already been reorganized. That new fact gave their unknown enemy time, access, and authority. It also gave Titan time to investigate Captain Ormond's peppermint breath. The lion inhaled too closely. His expression changed from curiosity to spiritual betrayal. He sneezed 4 times and glared at Ormond as if the captain had concealed a weapon in his mouth. Linnea laughed into her sleeve. Everard's shoulders moved once beside her. "The investigation has claimed its first victim," he observed. Ormond retrieved the wet bag. "I request reassignment to an enemy border, Majesty." They found nothing else that day. On the following afternoon, Linnea was ordered to bathe both lions before the court guests arrived. The royal animal keeper assured her this was possible. His refusal to remain and demonstrate suggested otherwise. Atlas entered the tiled washroom with solemn patience. He allowed Linnea to wet his coat, soap his shoulders, and rinse his mane. He tolerated exactly 1 towel. Titan saw the water and became a revolution. He escaped the washroom with soap across his back. Linnea chased him through a service passage, around the west staircase, and into the council gallery. Wet paw prints marked every polished tile. Titan shook himself beneath a portrait of Everard's grandfather. Water struck the painted king with democratic enthusiasm. Everard arrived from the opposite corridor. He had removed his formal coat and carried a stack of sealed letters. "Do not let him reach the council chamber," he ordered. Titan reached the council chamber. The lion charged between 2 elders, slid across the floor, and stopped beneath the central table. Linnea followed too quickly. Her wet shoes lost their grip. Everard caught her arm, but her momentum pulled them both sideways. They landed against the table. Sealed letters flew into the air like startled birds. Titan emerged and shook again. Councillor Voss received most of the water. The old lord sat rigid beneath it. His narrow silver beard dripped onto a border map. A red clay stain marked the heel of one expensive boot, strangely bright against the dark leather. Linnea apologized while fighting a dangerous urge to laugh. Voss wiped his face with a report. Those animals should be chained. Atlas appeared in the doorway. He had followed at a dignified pace and remained almost dry. His gaze fixed on Voss, and a low rumble stirred his chest. Everard stepped between the counselor and the lion. His voice stayed calm as he informed Voss that the animals would be managed without his assistance. Then Titan placed both wet paws on the king's shoulders. Everard closed his eyes. Linnea lost the fight. Her laughter rang through the chamber, bright and helpless. Captain Ormond turned toward the wall. Two elders developed urgent coughs. Everard opened his eyes and looked at her. Water ran from his hair to his collar. For a suspended second, royal discipline battled amusement. Amusement won. His laugh began quietly, then deepened into a warm sound Linnea had never heard from him. It changed his whole face. Even his wolf seemed to rise beneath his skin without anger. Voss did not laugh. He watched Linnea with a sharpness that remained in her mind after the floor was dry. The wet council chamber produced an official response the following morning. 3 elders demanded iron muzzles for the lions before the visiting nobles appeared. Linnea examined the proposed restraints. They were heavy enough to bruise Atlas and narrow enough to prevent Titan from panting after exercise. She refused to use them. The chief steward reminded her that refusal was not usually available to servants. Linnea reminded him that the king had hired her to prevent disasters involving lions. Injuring both animals before a crowded ceremony qualified as a disaster. Everard heard the exchange from the gallery. He did not settle it by royal command. Instead, he asked Linnea to demonstrate a safer plan before sunset. She marked 2 resting places in the empty ballroom with plain leather mats. Atlas accepted his mat after one walk around the room. Titan sat on Atlas's mat, then spread himself across both. The senior keeper sighed into his hands. Linnea changed the exercise. Rather than forcing Titan toward a place, she asked Everard to cross the ballroom as he would during a court presentation. The king moved with controlled authority. His wolf remained close beneath his skin. Both lions watched every step. When Everard imagined a Luna candidate approaching, tension entered his scent. Atlas rose. Titan abandoned the mats and positioned himself across the king's path. Linnea understood before anyone else. The lions were not ignoring the training. They were responding to a command Everard never spoke. They feel your wolf preparing to defend itself, she explained. Everard's jaw tightened. He had disliked every courtship presentation, but treated that dislike as a private weakness. The lions had interpreted it as danger. Linnea asked him to repeat the walk while acknowledging what he felt instead of burying it. He gave her a dry look. You would like me to discuss my emotions with 2 lions and 6 witnesses. The witnesses may cover their ears. Captain Ormond immediately did so. The senior keeper followed with suspicious enthusiasm. Everard tried again. This time he admitted that the coming court made him feel displayed like breeding stock. His words remained quiet, but honesty eased the bitter edge from his scent. Atlas returned to his mat. Titan considered the second mat, turned 3 circles, and sat with his back toward the imaginary candidate. Progress, Linnea decided. He is facing the wrong direction. Titan flicked one ear toward the king, but refused to turn. He is seated and has not eaten a curtain. Everard accepted her professional standard. They practiced until both lions remained in place, while servants crossed the floor carrying ribbons, flowers, and covered trays. Titan objected only to a musician tuning a high violin note. He placed one paw over his own nose and looked betrayed by art. The elders withdrew their demand for muzzles. Linnea gained authority over every ceremonial decision involving the lions. After the witnesses left, Everard helped her lift the leather mats. Their hands met on one corner. You made me admit fear before my captain, he observed. Discomfort, Linnea corrected. You called it discomfort. Everard glanced at the captain's retreating back. I was preserving what remained of the crown. She looked toward Titan, who sat backward on his mat. The crown has endured worse. Everard's laugh followed her from the ballroom. The summer court would arrive in 2 days, and Linnea understood the lions better than anyone had in 18 months. The summer court entered Blackthorne Hall 2 days later. Carriages rolled through the gates beneath banners of black and gold. Noble wolves crossed the entrance hall in silk, polished boots, and enough perfume to stun prey at 20 paces. Lady Celestine Harrow arrived last. She wore plum-colored silk and carried herself with the perfect confidence of a woman trained to enter rooms already certain of her welcome. She was beautiful without appearing to work at it. Linnea disliked her for almost 3 seconds, then disliked herself instead. Atlas and Titan waited at the top of the steps. Neither wore a lead because Everard had refused to greet a future Luna while visibly restraining 2 lions. Celestine paused beside her carriage. Unlike Lady Prunella, she wore no courtship ribbon. She had requested a private introduction before participating in the formal ritual. Atlas did not attack her. He watched. Titan sniffed her gloved hand, then sat without touching the silk. Celestine examined the damp glove. I assume this is progress. Everard descended to greet her. He has left the silk intact. Her laugh sounded graceful and practiced. Her gaze moved past him to Linnea, who held a grooming brush near the doorway. You must be Miss Bell, Celestine remarked, the famous lion keeper. Linnea curtsied. The lions are more famous, my lady. Atlas crossed the space and placed himself in front of Linnea. It was not aggression. It was possession performed with several 100 pounds of muscle. Celestine noticed. Her smile remained warm, but interest sharpened beneath it. The house party transformed Blackthorne Hall. Music traveled through open windows. Servants carried flowers, wine, and trays of food along every corridor. Nobles discussed marriage while pretending to discuss weather. Its first official disaster involved a portrait that had not yet been painted. Master Pellerin, the royal artist, arrived with 3 assistants and a canvas large enough to shelter a family. The council wanted a preliminary image of Everard, Celestine, and the lions for the winter proclamations. No engagement had occurred. The council considered this a detail the painter could add later. Everard stood before a velvet backdrop while Celestine took the chair beside him. Atlas and Titan were expected to pose at their feet. Linnea waited outside the canvas frame to give the handling commands. Atlas sat on his marked place. Titan turned around and presented his back to the artist. Master Pellerin lowered his charcoal. Could he face the throne? Linnea gave the command again. Titan looked over one shoulder, confirmed that everyone remained unreasonable, and faced the wall. Everard's mouth tightened. He may dislike my composition, the painter suggested. He has never shown concern for composition, Everard replied. The assistants moved the lion's mat. Titan remained seated while the mat slid beneath him, forcing 3 grown men to drag both across the polished floor. Atlas watched until their breathing became undignified. Then he left his perfect position and walked to Linnea. He sat on the hem of her gray skirt. Linnea could neither approach the canvas nor retreat from it. Master Pellerin studied the new arrangement with the despair of a man watching politics defeat art. Celestine suggested that Linnea stand behind the backdrop. The lions might then focus on the royal pair. Linnea stepped behind the velvet. Atlas followed, taking half the backdrop with him. The heavy cloth sagged. One assistant vanished beneath it. Titan finally turned around, interested now that the portrait involved structural failure. Everard caught the wooden frame before it fell on Celestine. Linnea freed the assistant while Atlas stood among folds of velvet, entirely certain he had rescued her from something. Master Pellerin removed his spectacles and cleaned them, although they were not dirty. Perhaps, he proposed carefully, Miss Bell could stand within the composition. The room fell quiet. Linnea felt every difference in rank settle across her shoulders. A laundry maid did not appear in a royal courtship portrait unless she held a tray or disappeared into the background. Celestine's posture remained perfect. Her fingers tightened once on the arm of her chair. Everard looked at the empty space the painter had prepared beside him. The planned image showed a successful courtship before either person had chosen one. He ordered the canvas turned around. The council representative protested that proclamations required preparation. Everard answered that preparation did not permit the crown to publish a lie. Celestine had not agreed to become Luna. He had not asked her. Linnea would not be placed in a picture as an animal-handling curiosity. The artist could sketch the lions alone or wait until reality provided a truthful subject. Celestine rose from the chair. Surprise softened her polished expression before pride restored it. "I appreciate the distinction, Your Majesty." Everard inclined his head. "You should not be painted into a promise you have not made." Linnea saw then that his resistance to the Luna selection was not merely attraction to someone else. He disliked the way duty consumed everyone's choices, including the women offered to him. Master Pellerin turned the canvas toward the wall. The moment Celestine's chair was removed, Titan walked to the center of the backdrop and sat facing forward. Atlas joined him. Both lions lifted their heads and held perfectly still. The artist stared at them. "Now?" Titan arranged one paw over the other. Everard folded his arms. "They have approved the revised commission." The resulting sketch showed two royal lions against rumpled velvet, one noble and one unbearably pleased. It became Master Pellerin's finest work that summer. It also gave the court a new rumor. By dinner, half the guests believed Atlas had dragged Linnea into a royal portrait. The other half claimed Everard had canceled the painting because Titan objected to Celestine's chair. Only 4 people knew the simpler truth. The king had refused to let appearance become a decision. Linnea moved among them in her gray dress. The difference between her world and theirs had never appeared clearer. Their wolves wore jeweled collars when shifted. Hers had once worn a repaired harness because new leather cost too much. Everard spent his days surrounded by guests. Celestine stood beside him with natural ease. She knew council members by name and could discuss grain tariffs without making anyone wish for sleep. Linnea reminded herself that this was sensible. Kings married women trained for courts. Laundry maids removed wine from the wedding linen afterward. Both lions rejected this philosophy. During afternoon tea, Titan pushed an unattended cake plate across the carpet with his nose. It stopped against Linnea's shoe while Atlas created privacy through intimidation. "You are not helping," Linnea whispered. Titan dropped the cake into her palm. The icing landed first. A low voice came from behind a potted palm. "He may be trying to poison you." Everard stood half hidden by the leaves. He wore a formal black coat with gold at the collar, and his hair had been forced into obedience. Linnea looked at the cake. "Is it that bad?" The king glanced toward the tea table. "I ate one during Lady Morwen's discussion of embroidery. I blamed the conversation until now." Linnea smiled despite herself. She wrapped the cake in a napkin before Titan could reconsider his generosity. Everard noticed the distance she had placed between them since the guests arrived. Their last 3 handling sessions had contained commands for the lions and almost nothing for him. The lions required instructions. Linnea kept her attention on the cake. Everard reminded her that he had spoken too. "Your questions were not about training." She folded the napkin. "One concerned my opinion of the sunset." Everard stepped nearer, careful to leave her an open path. "I may have judged the danger severely." Beyond the palm, Celestine's laughter rose beside the piano. Linnea kept her attention on Titan. "You should return to your guests, Your Majesty." "I am speaking to one." She reminded him that she was an employee. His expression grew serious. He acknowledged her position and the risk created by his attention. Then he explained that Celestine had come because the council invited every suitable candidate. "She is not here because I chose her," he finished. Linnea's fingers tightened around the napkin. "A king cannot always choose." Everard's eyes warmed gold. His wolf disliked that answer. Then the crown has misunderstood its king. Titan chose that moment to swallow the napkin. Linnea gasped. Everard looked at the lion, then at the empty place where the cloth had been. He has removed the evidence, the king concluded. Her smile broke free. Everard watched it with an intensity that changed the air between them. Across the room, Celestine raised her glass. She had seen enough to understand that the laundry maid was not merely a useful servant. That evening, neither lion would return to the enclosure. They led Linnea through a narrow passage behind the library and stopped at an old records room. Dust and stale paper thickened the air. Titan scratched at a cabinet until Linnea opened it. Inside, private household ledgers leaned against one another like tired men. She should have waited for Everard. She knew that. Then she saw Bell written along the edge of a narrow volume. Linnea pulled it free. The book listed Queen Elspeth's private household. Eleanor Bell appeared on a separate line from the servants, companion to the Luna Queen. Linnea stared until the letters blurred. Everard's voice came from the doorway. You found something. He entered with Captain Ormond behind him. Linnea showed him the line. Surprise crossed his face, followed by anger at whoever had erased the matching public record. They searched the cabinet together. Everard reached the higher shelves while Linnea read each index. Ormond guarded the passage. The lions stationed themselves beside the door, although Titan occasionally abandoned duty to investigate cobwebs. An hour later, Everard found a green account book. A payment had been approved for Eleanor 15 years earlier. The amount could have purchased a cottage, paid every medical bill, and left enough for a comfortable life. Linnea's mother had never received it. They had lived above a cooper's shop where winter wind entered through the roof. Eleanor had sewn until her fingers bled. Linnea had watered soup and called it stew because the second word sounded more nourishing. There must be a mistake. Her voice felt distant. Everard turned the page. A withdrawal appeared 3 days after the payment order. Someone had collected the full amount, but the recipient's name had been scraped away. The paper itself had torn beneath the blade. Linnea gripped the cabinet. Anger came before grief. Poverty had always seemed like weather, cruel but impersonal. Now it had a hand, a knife, and access to royal accounts. Atlas growled at the passage. Ormond turned. Footsteps retreated beyond the door, too quick for a servant completing ordinary work. The captain followed but found the passage empty. Everard closed the account book and placed it beneath his coat. He decided they would continue in his locked study. Until they knew who had listened, the discovery would remain private. Linnea objected to being protected from the truth. I am protecting the evidence, he clarified. You are more difficult to lock in a cabinet. Despite the fear tightening her stomach, she almost smiled. That depends on the cabinet. His gaze dropped briefly to her mouth. I will avoid testing the theory. It was the first time his interest became impossible to mistake. The next morning brought the formal courtship rehearsal. It also answered why the lions behaved like critics of royal marriage. By ancient custom, a Luna candidate wore a white ribbon scented with the king's cedar oil. She approached within 3 steps and offered her wrist to his wolf. The gesture was symbolic, but wolves took symbols more seriously than people expected. Lady Celestine entered the rose court wearing the ribbon across one shoulder. Council members formed a polished half-circle. Linnea waited beside the lions, holding both leads. Everard stood at the center in formal black and gold. His posture remained calm. The tension in his scent did not. Linnea's wolf noticed first. So did Atlas. When Celestine reached the 3rd step, Everard's wolf pressed against his control. It did not want the offered wrist. It did not want the cedar-marked ribbon claiming an intimacy the man had not chosen. Atlas lunged. Linnea released the lead before it could drag her across the paving. The lion stopped beside Celestine, caught the white ribbon between his teeth, and pulled. The knot opened. The ribbon slid from her gown without tearing the silk. Titan seized the loose end and ran around the fountain. Atlas followed. Between them, they stretched the ribbon across the water like a victory banner. One counselor shouted. Another stepped backward into a rose bush. Celestine remained motionless, staring at the empty place on her shoulder. Titan released his end. The wet ribbon slapped Lord Voss across the face. Linnea covered her mouth. Everard looked toward the sky with the expression of a king requesting patience from any deity currently available. Celestine recovered first. They were remarkably precise. Linnea studied Atlas. The lion had not growled until Everard's scent changed. They were protecting his wolf from the ritual. Silence spread across the court. Everard looked at her. Understanding passed over his face, followed by discomfort. He had spent 18 months blaming the lions for reactions that began inside himself. Captain Ormond retrieved the dripping ribbon from Voss's shoulder. This may reduce the animal discipline paperwork. It will increase the royal discipline paperwork, Everard replied. He ended the rehearsal. Before the council could object, he announced that no further candidate would perform a scent exchange until he chose freely to continue. That decision created a new wave of gossip. It also changed the Lion's reputation. They were not judging women's virtue. They were defending a royal wolf forced toward unwanted bonds. Celestine found Linnea afterward near the fountain. Her politeness remained flawless, but the softness had left it. "The lions do not attack you," she observed. Linnea coiled the damp lead. "I have never tried to court the king." Celestine glanced toward Everard, who waited with Captain Ormond across the court. His attention returned to Linnea every few breaths. "Perhaps you have not needed to try," the lady answered. She walked away before Linnea could reply. Everard approached as soon as Celestine left. He admitted that he had waited in case Linnea needed support. "That is unusually direct," she observed. "You objected to poor excuses." Water dripped from the lead onto Everard's polished boot. "I objected to being courted through excuses." Linnea coiled the damp lead more tightly. "Then honesty is an act of self-preservation." Linnea failed to hide her smile. Everard appeared satisfied with the new policy. The ruined ribbon hung from Captain Ormond's drying rack that afternoon. Titan sat beneath it with his back turned, while Atlas remained beside Linnea. By evening, 3 versions of the scene claimed the lions had rejected silk, rank, and 12 noble bloodlines in favor of 1 laundry apron. Linnea considered correcting the rumor. Mrs. Crowell advised her that explanations were merely food for healthier gossip. Instead, Linnea requested access to the Old East storage rooms. Queen Elspeth's letter had mentioned a dangerous winter, and the ledgers showed Eleanor assigned there during that season. Atlas and Titan followed. Everard arrived with the requested key, a lantern, and Captain Ormond waiting outside the door. The storage room contained damaged curtains, cracked trunks, and old winter clothing. Dust muffled their steps. Cedar blocks had lost their scent years ago. Titan buried his face in a basket and emerged wearing a moth-eaten shawl across his mane. Everard removed it with royal care. Atlas nosed a narrow wooden box from beneath a folded carpet. Inside lay scraps of blue silk, plain sewing needles, and a child's knitted mitten. Linnea touched the mitten. A memory struck with painful clarity. She was small and feverish, wrapped in blue cloth beside a fire. Her mother sat nearby, feeding milk to 2 tawny cubs with a strip of linen. One cub had bitten the linen and refused to release it. Eleanor had laughed. The other pressed against little Linnea's feet for warmth. The memory ended. Linnea sank onto the nearest trunk. Atlas came to her first. He placed his head in her lap with the same careful pressure she remembered against her feet. Titan sniffed the mitten, then pressed his nose against it so firmly that Linnea could not lift the cloth. Everard tried to move the lion's head. Titan increased the weight with calm determination while Linnea wiped sudden tears from her face. "That belongs to me," she reminded him. Titan finally lifted his chin. Everard handed her the flattened mitten with dignity that fooled no one. The memory provided no explanation for the money, but it established that Linnea had lived briefly at Blackthorne Hall. It also confirmed the lions knew her scent before reaching adulthood. Everard sat beside her on the trunk. Their shoulders almost touched. He explained that royal lions formed unusually strong scent memories. Atlas still recognized soldiers who had served with Everard a decade earlier. Blood relatives carried related scents, especially to a were-creature's heightened nose. They did not choose a queen, Linnea concluded. They remembered a family. That appears less embarrassing. Everard watched Titan hide behind a curtain with the shawl. For one of us. The discovery lifted one mystery while making Eleanor's silence heavier. Linnea wrapped the mitten in clean cloth and stored it with the letter. That night was the monthly pack run. Linnea usually shifted beyond the servants' gate, away from noble wolves who treated size as character. Her russet wolf was quick enough, but small beside the warriors of Blackthorne. She considered remaining indoors. Atlas blocked the door until she changed her mind. Moonlight silvered the lower meadow. Wolves gathered beneath the trees, their coats ranging from white to deep brown. Everard shifted at the top of the slope. His wolf was enormous, black across the back and gray at the chest. Power rolled through the pack when he lifted his head. It was not a threat. It was the deep certainty of the Alpha holding every wolf within his awareness. Linnea shifted behind the gathered wolves, her plain dress folded beneath Mrs. Crowell's cloak. A moment later, her small russet wolf stood in the grass. Several noble wolves glanced at her. One young male made a dismissive sound. Atlas walked over and sat beside Linnea. Titan sat on the young male's tail. The wolf yelped. Titan looked surprised by the noise, but declined to move. Everard's black wolf descended the slope. He approached Linnea without displaying dominance, then lowered his head until their noses nearly touched. His scent held cedar, cold stone, and a warmth she now recognized as amusement. Linnea's wolf touched her nose to his. Atlas released a satisfied rumble. Titan finally rose from the unfortunate tale. During the run, Everard kept pace beside Linnea rather than leading from far ahead. She knew he was slowing for her. She also knew enough pride to resent it. Linnea accelerated through the trees. Surprise flashed through his scent. Then the king followed. Her smaller body slipped between roots and low branches. Everard had power, but she had spent years avoiding laundry carts, creditors, and Cook Barda during inventory. She reached the creek first. When they shifted back behind separate screens, Everard met her on the path wearing a simple shirt and a wounded expression. "You allowed me to believe I was being considerate." Linnea tied her cloak. "Your Majesty was being slow." His laugh followed her toward the palace. The next day, a sealed envelope arrived from the city physician who had treated Eleanor. Everard had quietly requested her old records with Linnea's permission. The physician confirmed that Eleanor's memory had begun failing 5 years after she fled Blackthorne. By then, she suffered recurring fever, fear, and confusion. She often believed unknown men were outside the door. The report explained why she never returned with the truth. It did not identify what had frightened her. Linnea read it beside the lion enclosure. Wind carried the smell of hay and approaching rain. Everard waited without speaking. He did not touch her until she reached for his hand. Their fingers closed together between them. Titan noticed. He placed one paw on top of both hands, adding weight and several pieces of straw. Linnea looked down. "He believes this concerns him." "Most things do." Everard turned his hand beneath the paw, keeping hold of hers. "He has a broad definition of government." The small contact steadied her. It also made the coming ballroom feel more dangerous. That night, the house glittered with candlelight. Music flowed through the ballroom while rain gathered beyond the windows. Linnea carried a message from the lion keeper, then escaped onto the terrace. Wet roses scented the darkness. Below, Atlas and Titan moved through their enclosed garden like black shadows. She gripped the stone railing and tried to understand her mother's unknown life. Eleanor had taught her how to mend lace, bargain for vegetables, and recognize a landlord who intended to cheat. She had never spoken of Queen Elspeth. The terrace door opened behind her. Everard stepped into the rain-cooled air. Music softened when he closed the door. He kept a respectful distance. Linnea appreciated the care and resented the need for it. I keep thinking that answers should make her clearer, she confessed. Instead, my mother feels like someone I never met. Everard rested his hands on the railing. He told her that people had promised he would understand Queen Elspeth when he became older. After a moment, she asked whether age had brought him the promised understanding. No, I only became older. The honesty eased something inside her. Most nobles offered comfort like coins, polished for display and useless in private. Everard gave her truth, even when it provided no comfort. Inside, the orchestra began a waltz. Celestine would be waiting for him. Linnea imagined the two of them beneath the chandeliers, perfectly matched in height, rank, and expectation. Lady Celestine is very suitable, she murmured. Everard turned toward her. She is. The answer hurt more than it should have. He moved closer before she could retreat. Suitability has never made me search old ledgers at midnight. Linnea looked up. He told her what he saw when he looked at her. Not a prophecy, not a miraculous animal charmer. He saw a woman who faced two lions because she had been holding valuable sheets. He saw someone who defended her dignity without asking others to become smaller. Do not make me finer than I am, she warned. I am describing what is already there. The rain strengthened, whispering against ivy and stone. Everard lifted one hand, then stopped before touching her. Linnea could have stepped away. Instead, she placed her fingers against his sleeve. His control went very still. He touched her cheek with the back of his knuckles. The gesture was careful enough to hurt. His gaze lowered to her mouth, then returned to her eyes in a silent question. Linnea answered by leaning closer. The first kiss was soft. Warmth moved through her like sunlight entering a locked room. Everard gave her time to withdraw, but she curled her fingers into his coat and kissed him again. His arms settled around her waist. Restraint in him remained, yet everything beneath it changed. His wolf rose with a quiet, powerful joy that brightened his eyes. Atlas barked below. Titan answered with a roar that sent 3 pigeons out of the roof gutter. Linnea broke away, breathless. Do they always announce your private moments? Everard looked over the railing. Only the successful ones. The terrace door opened. Celestine stood inside beneath the chandelier light. Her expression remained perfectly pleasant, but her gaze moved from Everard's hand at Linnea's waist to Linnea's flushed mouth. There you are, she remarked. The council has begun wondering whether the lions misplaced you. Everard lowered his arm but did not step away from Linnea. They knew exactly where I was. Celestine's smile held. Something colder appeared behind it. Linnea curtsied and returned inside. As she passed, she smelled Celestine's violet perfume and the coming storm. Lord Voss watched from the far side of the ballroom. He saw humiliation tighten Celestine's smile and understood exactly where an ugly rumor would spread fastest. Near dawn, while the guests slept, a bribed archive clerk unlocked Everard's study with a copied key. He removed the green account book and Queen Elspeth's letter. Before leaving, he placed a folded transcript beneath Celestine's bedroom door. The transcript contained the payment to Eleanor Bell. It did not contain the reason. Linnea learned about the theft before breakfast. Everard stood in his study beside the open cabinet. The lock showed no damage. The account book, Elspeth's letter, and the copied staff list had vanished. Everything else remained untouched. Captain Ormond examined the keyhole. Only 4 people held authorized keys. Everard owned 1. Ormond and Mrs. Crowell held 2 more. The chief archive clerk, Mr. Pell, controlled the 4th. Pell arrived pale and trembling. His key had not left his neck, but wax marked one edge. Someone had pressed it into a mold while he slept. Titan sniffed the cabinet, then followed the scent into the passage. He stopped outside a guest staircase and sneezed. Too many shoes, perfumes, and breakfast trays had crossed the area. The trail was gone. Everard ordered a quiet search of every exit and instructed the guards to watch the archives. Linnea asked whether the guests would be searched. Not without evidence, he answered. A king may dislike someone without inspecting her luggage. She thought of Celestine at the terrace door. That sounds inconvenient. The law often is. His gaze settled on Linnea. That is why it matters when convenience would help me most. The kiss remained between them, vivid and unresolved. Everard did not pretend it had been an accident. Linnea did not call it one. Neither knew what could follow while evidence disappeared and half the kingdom expected him to select a Luna. They agreed to speak that evening. The palace prevented it with professional efficiency. At breakfast, anonymous copies of Eleanor's payment appeared beneath 6 noble plates. Each showed the huge sum and the erased recipient. A handwritten question had been added beneath it. What service earned a companion this reward? By noon, whispers claimed Eleanor had blackmailed Queen Elspeth. By tea, she had become the late king's mistress. Before supper, one creative guest suggested Linnea was secretly royal, which would have required Queen Elspeth to give birth to her husband's mistress. Cook Barda rejected that version on structural grounds. Celestine never repeated the accusations directly. She merely expressed concern that gossip might hurt Linnea. Her sympathy was soft, public, and sharpened on both sides. Linnea carried lion bowls through the service hall while conversations stopped around her. She understood humiliation. It was not always a shouted insult. Sometimes it was a room becoming polite when she entered. Atlas and Titan stayed close. Titan ignored breakfast entirely, which worried her more than the gossip. Everard found her in the lion house after lunch. His face held the controlled stillness that preceded royal fury. He had identified the copied page as the missing account entry. Only the thief, or someone connected to the thief, could have distributed it. Then arrest Lady Celestine, Linnea urged. Everard wanted to. His wolf wanted to, with fewer formalities. However, no witness had seen her in the archive, and an anonymous envelope was not proof. Linnea hated the answer because it was correct. Everard announced that he would publicly deny every rumor about Eleanor. Linnea stopped him. A king insisting on innocence without evidence would look like a man protecting the woman he kissed. I am that man, he replied. You are also the king. The conflict tightened between them. Everard could command silence, but commanded silence would never restore Eleanor's name. Linnea needed truth, not a favor powerful enough to resemble truth. He understood after a moment. Understanding did not improve his mood. I dislike being reasonable when it prevents me from defending you. Linnea rested one hand against Atlas's mane. You may practice. I expect the condition is unfamiliar. Everard's mouth shifted despite his anger. He agreed to wait 48 hours while Ormond investigated the copied key and paper supply. That evening, Titan found a glove beneath the archive stairs. It belonged to Celestine. Captain Ormond carried it to Everard's study on a tray. Atlas sniffed it once, then walked away. Titan pinned the tray with his forepaw until Linnea moved it beyond reach. Celestine claimed she lost the glove while touring the library with 8 other guests. 3 witnesses confirmed the tour. The glove proved she had walked near the archive. It proved nothing else. She asked why the king appeared so eager to accuse her. Everard's reply was measured. I am eager to identify a thief. Celestine looked toward Linnea. Of course. Affection can make justice feel urgent. Linnea saw the trap. If Everard became angry, Celestine would turn his anger into evidence of bias. She stepped forward and returned the glove herself. Justice should feel urgent, even when affection is absent, my lady. Celestine accepted it. Her fingers tightened inside the soft leather. After she left, Everard looked at Linnea with open admiration. Do not, Linnea warned. I have not spoken. Everard lifted both empty hands. The corner of his mouth betrayed him. Your face has. Linnea watched his attempted innocence fail. He protested that everyone called his expression stony. Stone can be smug. The exchange did not solve the theft. It did prevent Celestine from taking the last word. Ormond's investigation produced a new name. A junior clerk named Hollis Dane had purchased beeswax from the candle room 2 days earlier. He claimed it was for a sticking drawer. The drawer did not stick. Hollis had also paid a gambling debt with a gold crown beyond his salary. When guards went to his room, they found it empty. His spare coat remained. His boots were gone. Voss suggested Hollis had acted alone to sell palace gossip. Everard considered the idea possible, and the speed of Voss's conclusion suspicious. Linnea remembered the red clay on Voss's boot during the lion bath. The palace paths used gray gravel. Red clay came from the southern glasshouses and the old garden beyond them. The abandoned green cottage stood past those glasshouses, she told Everard. They returned to the cottage with Ormond and both lions before dusk. The door remained locked. Ormond broke the rusted mechanism with one shoulder, then pretended not to enjoy doing so. Inside, dust covered an old table, 2 stools, and a collapsed shelf. Ivy pushed through one window. The air smelled of damp timber and cold ash. Titan investigated the hearth. Atlas sniffed the floorboards. Neither found a hidden box. Linnea searched the shelves and discovered scratches beneath the dust. Someone had moved them recently, but the bare wall revealed nothing. Behind the cottage, Ormond found a boot print in red mud. Rain had softened the edges. It matched a city-made heel, common among noblemen and senior officials. It was another clue that accused no one. Linnea's frustration followed them home. Answers seemed to retreat whenever she approached. Her mother remained trapped between a gracious letter and an ugly payment. Everard walked beside her beneath the oaks. Atlas and Titan ranged ahead, chasing falling leaves with very different levels of dignity. "Do you regret last night?" he asked. Linnea's heart stumbled. The search? The part on the terrace that involved less dust. Titan leaped at a leaf and landed in a puddle. Linnea watched him rather than the king. She did not regret the kiss. She regretted that wanting another had become a physical ache. She regretted the pleasure of hearing Everard laugh and the ease of standing beside him. "No," she answered. "But not regretting something does not make it simple." Everard accepted that. He told her he would not turn one kiss into a claim. He also refused to behave as if it meant nothing. That careful balance made her trust him more. Trust was far more dangerous than attraction. The formal dinner required one final positioning exercise the following day. Everard attended because the lions responded to his wolf, while Linnea controlled their visible commands. Atlas settled beside the garden doors exactly as directed. Titan examined his assigned mat, moved it 3 feet, and placed it between Linnea and Everard. Linnea returned the mat to its proper position. Titan moved it back. After the 3rd attempt, Everard folded his arms. He has expressed a preference. He is not arranging the ballroom. Titan set his forepaw on the mat and looked at Linnea. Everard lowered his voice. Negotiations may be necessary. Linnea agreed that the mat could remain halfway between the original position and Titan's demand. The lion lay down with his tail across Everard's boot. "A successful compromise," the king observed. "You have lost the use of one foot." His gaze warmed. "I have gained your company for the evening." The answer carried no false medical emergency and no poor excuse. Linnea still needed a moment before ordering Atlas to stay. Titan's purr shook dust from the rafters. The final arrangement clearly met his private standard. They still had not spoken about what came next. The opportunity arrived at a formal dinner and immediately became worse than silence. Celestin sat on Everard's right. Linnea did not belong at the table, but her new duties required her to remain near the open garden doors. The lions had been allowed inside after Titan demonstrated that closing the doors merely changed the location of the damage. Voss raised Eleanor's payment during the 2nd course. He framed the question as concern for royal integrity. Several elders demanded a formal inquiry into the missing records and Linnea's access to them. Everard's hand tightened around his cup. It was made of pewter because ordinary silver burned werewolf skin. The metal bent slightly beneath his fingers. Linnea stepped forward before he could answer. She requested the inquiry herself. The room quieted. She testified that her archive visit occurred under royal authorization and in the presence of witnesses. She wanted every record examined. Her mother deserved facts, even if those facts proved painful. Voss appeared displeased by her agreement. He had expected fear or royal interference, not cooperation. Celestine offered a sympathetic smile. You are very brave, Miss Bell. Titan walked behind her chair and rested his heavy chin on the polished table. His stare remained fixed on Linnea until Celestine's perfect smile became difficult to maintain. He is less subtle, Linnea observed. Everard looked into his cup to hide a smile. Several guests failed to manage their own. The inquiry would begin in 3 days. Until then, Linnea lost access to the archives, but remained the lion's keeper. Everard insisted on the distinction because no evidence connected her to the theft. After dinner, Linnea returned to her room above the lion house. Someone had pushed a folded note beneath the door. Like mother, like daughter, how much will this king pay you? The words struck harder than open accusation. Linnea stood in the narrow room, hearing rain tick against the roof. Her few dresses hung from wooden pegs. Her mother's calm rested beside a jar of buttons. She had built her life from small, honest things. A stranger had reduced it to a price. Atlas growled in the corridor. Everard's scent reached her a moment before his knock. She considered hiding the note. Instead, she opened the door and handed it to him. Anger turned his eyes gold. His wolf pushed forward, filling the small room with alpha power. Atlas and Titan lowered themselves, not in fear, but readiness. Linnea remained standing. Do not frighten the furniture. It cannot confess. Everard drew one slow breath. The pressure eased. He asked whether she wanted guards outside her room. She refused. He offered another room in the protected royal wing. She refused that too. I will not hide you, he promised. I am trying to keep you safe. Those are sometimes the same thing. Everard looked around the room, taking in its low ceiling and carefully repaired blanket. Tell me what you need. No powerful person had ever asked Linnea that without already choosing the answer. She needed him to trust her decisions. She needed the inquiry to continue. She needed him to understand that kindness could become another form of control when it left no room for pride. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked for something in return. Do not disappear to protect me without allowing me a choice. Linnea knew he had seen the thought in her face. Leaving would remove one problem from his court. It would also repeat her mother's lonely flight. She agreed not to leave without speaking to him first. Everard folded the cruel note and placed it inside his coat. He should have gone. Instead, he remained in the doorway while the lions settled across the hall. There is something else, he told her. Linnea waited. His wolf had become calm around her before Everard understood why. The lions had recognized Eleanor's blood, but his wolf had recognized safety. Not a forced mate bond. Not an order from fate. A feeling that grew each time she challenged him, laughed at him, or trusted him with grief. I noticed you because of Atlas and Titan, he continued. I came back because of you. Linnea's defenses tightened. Everard, it was the first time she had used his name. He went still, and warmth replaced some of the anger in his eyes. Again, he requested. Despite everything, she almost laughed. You are an Alpha King. Surely one hearing is sufficient. Not for that. Linnea looked down at her work-roughened hands. She loved him. The truth had grown quietly through wet lion fur, dusty ledgers, shared laughter, and every moment he chose restraint over power. Love did not erase the difference between them. It made honesty necessary. She told him she would not become a hidden amusement. She would not accept charity disguised as a position. He could not decide which truths were too painful for her. Everard accepted each condition without bargaining. Then he gave her one of his own. If fear told her to run, she had to speak before obeying it. Linnea considered the man, the king, and the wolf waiting beneath his skin. Agreed. He did not reach for her yet. That was not the answer I hoped to hear tonight. Her heart beat hard enough to feel foolish. I love you, Everard. The control in his face broke open. He crossed the small distance, stopping close enough for her to feel his warmth. I love you, Linnea Bell. This kiss held no uncertainty. She rose into it, and his arms closed around her with careful strength. His mouth warmed against hers while rain whispered over the roof. Linnea touched the scar across his brow. Everard kissed her again, slower, as though there were time now. Neither of them hurried to turn the moment into a joke. When they finally separated, his forehead rested against hers, and their breathing filled the quiet room. "Was that the answer you wanted?" she murmured. Everard kissed the corner of her mouth. "I may require confirmation tomorrow. Your position remains under review. Then I will prepare an appeal." When he finally left, nothing outside the room had become easier. The inquiry still waited. Her mother's name remained under suspicion. Celestin still carried a perfect smile, and Hollis Dane was missing. Yet Linnea was no longer facing those things alone. This time, was a choice made by both of them. The first morning of their acknowledged love began with both lions refusing breakfast. Atlas sat at his handling mark. Titan sat on the feed table side of the room. Neither touched the meat because their paired morning session could not begin without Everard. The king arrived at the proper hour, carrying 2 cups of tea. Linnea disliked how much pleasure she found in seeing him keep an ordinary promise. Everard surveyed the untouched bowls. Have they developed principles? Worse, a schedule. Atlas rose when Everard took his place beside Linnea. Titan immediately began eating, proving that discipline and appetite had negotiated privately. Everard handed Linnea 1 cup without looking away from her. "Good morning." The warmth in his voice made the ordinary words intimate. Linnea lowered her eyes to the steam. "You have been here for 5 minutes. I was waiting until Titan's mouth was occupied." The lion ate with focused determination. Atlas watched both humans. "You chose the wrong building for privacy." Everard leaned closer. His lips brushed her temple where no servant crossing the yard could see. "Good morning, Linnea." Her pulse warmed. "Good morning, Everard. Your lions have trained you successfully. Romance has made you severe." The handling session ended when Atlas's sleeping cushion split along one side. Wool stuffing emerged across the floor in gray clumps. Linnea carried the cushion into the tack room. The inquiry would begin in less than an hour, but Atlas refused to settle without his proper bed. A restless lion in a closed council room would not improve anyone's honesty. Everard followed with the loose stuffing gathered against his chest. "You may return to being king," Linnea told him. "I can mend 1 seam. My first duty is keeping the inquiry safe from a tired lion." It was a real duty, stated without ceremony. Linnea handed him a spool of heavy thread. Everard attempted to thread the needle. His fingers were steady enough for a sword and entirely unsuited to a hole smaller than a grain of rice. On the 4th attempt, the thread bent away from him. "It fears royal authority," Linnea observed. "Everything else has been encouraged to ignore it." She took the needle. Everard still held the thread, leaving their hands close above the worn cloth. Linnea showed him how to flatten the end and guide it through without force. Her mother had taught her the same motion over a cracked kitchen table. Eleanor believed a good repair should be strong before it became pretty. She also believed matching thread was a luxury invented by merchants. Everard smiled. Queen Elspeth had held a similar opinion about royal maps. She repaired torn borders with whatever ribbon came to hand, leaving several military charts crossed by pink silk. The memory made both mothers briefly present without turning either into a monument. Everard held the cushion while Linnea stitched. His thumb kept the torn edges aligned. Each time her fingers brushed his attention left the seam. "You are watching the wrong part," she warned. "The seam appears under control." Linnea pulled the next stitch through the leather. "The seam has not been questioned by the council." Linnea tapped the repaired edge. "Then, it has an unfair advantage." Linnea tied off the final stitch. Everard tested it with 1 careful pull, then looked at her with quiet admiration. "Your mother taught you to restore things without hiding where they broke." The observation settled deeply. Linnea had planned to defend herself during the inquiry and say as little as possible about Eleanor. Now she changed that decision. She would tell the truth openly, including her own unauthorized entry into the archive. A visible repair was stronger than a beautiful lie. Everard saw the decision form. What changed? A cushion offered legal guidance. Atlas has always wanted a council seat. The lion waited outside the tack room. Titan sat beside him with wool clinging to one whisker. Everard lowered his voice. We still have 12 minutes. Linnea looked at the door, then back at him. For what? He kissed her before offering an answer. The kiss was brief, warm, and deliberate enough to make 12 minutes seem dangerously generous. For courage, he murmured. Whose? Everard's gaze dropped briefly to her mouth. Mine. Linnea kissed him once more. Then she carried the repaired cushion outside. Atlas lay down, shifted his weight, and released a satisfied breath. Titan tried to claim the remaining corner with his forepaw. Atlas looked at him. Titan removed the paw. The repair had passed judgment. Linnea hoped she would do the same. The inquiry opened after breakfast. 3 neutral elders reviewed access records in a private chamber. Captain Ormond presented the copied key, the missing clerk, and the anonymous pages. Linnea described finding the letter and account book. Everard confirmed every part of her account, but did not sit beside her. Appearances mattered, especially when their relationship had become another weapon. Voss asked whether Linnea had known about the payment before entering royal service. She answered that she had known nothing about Blackthorne Hall until the lions approached her. He questioned whether she might have trained them secretly. Linnea looked at Titan. He was trying to open a cabinet by licking the handle. If I had trained him, my lord, I would request a refund. One elder coughed into her hand. Everard's face remained controlled, but amusement warmed his scent. Voss moved to the terrace kiss. Celestine had reported seeing Everard and Linnea alone. He implied the king had granted archive access because of personal desire. Linnea refused the shame he offered. The archive permission had been granted before the kiss and witnessed by Ormond. Her affection for the king did not alter the order of events. Everard then stated plainly that he loved Linnea. The room went silent enough to hear Titan's tongue rasp across the cabinet handle. Voss had expected denial or embarrassment. Public honesty removed both tools. The inquiry continued. At noon, Ormond reported that Hollis had boarded no public coach and withdrawn no money. A stable boy remembered lending him an old cloak after midnight. The clerk claimed he needed air, then walked toward the southern glasshouses. New rain had erased most tracks, but a broken button lay beside the garden wall. It matched Hollis's spare coat. The evidence suggested he had not fled through the main gate. Someone had hidden him, harmed him, or moved him through a private exit. Everard ordered a search of the estate grounds. Voss objected that the summer guests would feel accused. The king replied that innocent guests should welcome finding a missing clerk. Celestine watched the exchange without speaking. That afternoon, she asked Linnea to walk in the winter garden. Linnea accepted because refusing private conversations allowed other people to invent them. Glass panes held the day's gray light above beds of rosemary and white roses. Warm soil scented the damp air. Red clay covered the paths, matching the stain Linnea had noticed on Voss's boot. Celestine admitted receiving an anonymous transcript. It appeared beneath her door after she saw the terrace kiss. She had shared the payment information with 2 friends, believing it proved Linnea's mother had manipulated the royal family. You wanted it to prove that, Linnea corrected. Celestine's polished calm cracked. She had spent her entire life preparing to become a Luna. Her family had shaped her education, friendships, and even her scent for the role. Then a laundry maid arrived, and 2 lions made all that preparation look foolish. Linnea understood the pain. She did not excuse the cruelty. Celestine claimed she had not stolen the original records. She also denied writing the note pushed under Linnea's door. That denial sounded different from her other statements. Linnea's wolf caught no sour trace of fear or deception, although scent could reveal emotion rather than truth. Linnea kept her voice even. Who knew you received the transcript? Celestine named her maid, 2 close friends, and Lord Voss. Voss had advised her to make the payment public before Everard could bury it. The new information connected Voss to the stolen page without proving he ordered the theft. Before leaving, Celestine apologized for using Eleanor's poverty as a weapon. The apology was stiff and incomplete, but it cost her something. Linnea accepted the words without promising forgiveness. Outside the glass house, Everard waited beside Atlas. He had positioned himself where he could see the door without appearing to guard it. He failed at the second part. "How long have you been waiting?" Linnea asked. "Since you entered." Everard glanced through the glass house door. "I promised not to hide my concern behind official language." Atlas leaned his broad side against the king's leg. "An alarmingly fast improvement." His solemn tone almost survived. "I respond well to strict supervision." She told him what Celestine revealed. Everard sent Ormond to question Voss's servants and search financial correspondence under the inquiry order. Then he noticed red clay on Linnea's shoe. He knelt before she could object and wiped it away with his handkerchief. The King of Blackthorne remained on one knee, his hand around her ankle. Warmth climbed her face. "People can see you," she murmured. Everard looked up. "I am cleaning evidence from my chief witness. Your hand is still on my ankle." The evidence was persistent. Atlas made a low approving sound. Linnea removed her foot before the lion could misunderstand the situation further. The estate search found no Hollis. It did reveal that a drainage gate behind the glass houses had been opened recently. The gate led toward an abandoned hunting road beyond the wall. Voss's secretary claimed the counselor had spent the entire night in his room. The palace guard outside that corridor remembered seeing no one enter or leave. The alibi sounded solid until the secretary backed away from Atlas and caught his trouser hem on a low iron bracket. The stitching tore. A small brass key fell from the folded cloth and rang against the stone. Linnea recognized the thick, hurried stitches. Someone had hidden the key in the hem that morning, using thread from Voss's office curtains. It opened the glasshouse gate. The secretary turned white. He insisted Voss had given him the key for morning walks. Voss called the discovery an absurd coincidence and demanded the lions be removed from the inquiry. This time, the elders agreed that the animals could not roam freely around witnesses. Atlas and Titan would remain in the royal menagerie except during supervised exercise. Everard disliked the order. Linnea accepted it because the law could not become optional when it inconvenienced them. Titan did not accept it. He lay across the menagerie entrance and refused to move. 4 keepers pushed. Titan purred. Atlas walked inside when Linnea asked, then turned and stared at his brother with elder disappointment. Titan finally rose. He entered backward at the slowest pace a lion could manage while maintaining open contempt. The gates closed behind them. Without the lions moving through the palace, the halls felt strangely empty. No one lost a glove before dinner. The kitchen completed an entire pie. 2 counselors crossed the gallery without checking behind curtains. Morale declined. Linnea visited the menagerie after dark. The enclosure was spacious, with heated stone, trees, and a covered sleeping room. Titan still behaved as though imprisoned in a coal cellar. He pressed his face through the bars and exhaled into her hair. Everard joined her carrying 2 cups of tea. He had learned that she preferred honey only when worried. Both cups contained too much. They sat on a bench outside the enclosure. Rainwater dripped from cedar branches, and the lion's breathing filled the pauses between them. Linnea told him she planned to move to a cottage in the village until the inquiry ended. She would keep her position and return each day, but staying above the menagerie allowed Voss to claim she had private access to royal property. Everard's body went still. He did not order her to stay. "Is this fear speaking?" he asked. She considered the conditions she had accepted. Fear was present, but it was not alone. The move would protect the inquiry, reduce gossip among servants, and allow her to choose the terms of her presence. It is a practical decision. You use that phrase when a decision hurts you. Linnea looked at her tea. Practical things often do. Everard disagreed with the move but respected it. He asked her to accept guards on the village road. She accepted 1 guard and refused the royal carriage. 2 guards, he countered. 1 guard and a horse that does not wear your crest. Linnea waited for his counteroffer. Everard requested 1 guard, an unmarked horse, and daily reports. Reports about what? She narrowed her eyes. He counted the subjects on his fingers. Whether you ate, whether you slept, whether the cottage roof leaks. Linnea raised one brow. Those sound less like security reports and more like worrying. The Crown uses specialized language. She leaned closer and kissed him softly. 1 guard. You may ask me the rest yourself. Everard considered the offer. Daily? Your negotiating position is weakening. He kissed her again before accepting. The following morning, Linnea packed her few belongings. Her dresses filled half a trunk. Her mother's comb, the child's mitten, and a purse of coins filled 1 corner. Atlas and Titan had been released for supervised exercise. Both arrived outside her door with Ormond and 2 exhausted keepers. Atlas lay across the threshold. Titan climbed onto the trunk. I am not leaving him, Linnea explained. I am moving 12 minutes away. Neither lion shifted. Titan hooked 1 claw into her best shoe and pulled it beneath his chest. Everard appeared at the end of the corridor. His coat was unbuttoned, and his hair suggested he had left a council meeting faster than dignity allowed. He took in the trunk, the lions, and Linnea holding 1 shoe. You promised not to disappear. Hurt roughened his voice. I sent you the address. Ormond examined the ceiling with professional interest. The keepers retreated several steps. Linnea explained the move again. Everard admitted that he had understood the plan but disliked seeing the trunk. The honesty removed the argument before it could grow. He did not ask her to abandon the decision. Instead, he offered to inspect the cottage personally. Linnea studied him. For security? The roof may be hostile. Titan rested his chin on her shoe. Linnea looked from the lion to the king. I appear surrounded by terrible excuses. She still moved that afternoon. Everard carried the trunk himself after Titan refused to release it to a footman. The sight of an Alpha King carrying a laundry maid's luggage through the village produced enough gossip to replace what the move had prevented. The cottage roof did leak. Everard discovered this during a hard shower. Water landed directly on his shoulder while he stood in the center of the room, declaring the structure secure. Linnea handed him a basin. The roof has rejected your findings. He set the basin beneath the drip. I will order repairs. You will ask the landlord to repair it. You do not own everything. Everard looked around. An unfamiliar limitation. He stayed for supper. Linnea made vegetable stew and apologized for its simplicity. Everard ate 2 bowls and asked whether palace cooks knew food could taste like this. They do, she replied. They add meat. Their laughter softened the small room. For 1 evening, the inquiry remained beyond the door. Then someone threw a stone through the window. Glass broke inward. Everard moved faster than sight, pulling Linnea behind him. His claws extended, and his eyes burned gold. A message had been tied around the stone. Leave the dead buried, or join them. The threat changed the inquiry into a criminal matter. Everard summoned guards, sealed the lane, and sent trackers into the rain. Linnea stood among broken glass while cold air entered her rented room. She could no longer pretend that moving away protected anyone. When Everard asked her to return to Blackthorne Hall, she agreed. It was not surrender. New evidence had changed the practical choice. He wrapped his cloak around her before they left. I will try not to look pleased. You are failing. The failure is profound. Back at the palace, Ormond brought another discovery. The paper around the stone came from the archive supply. A faint green stain marked 1 corner, made by the sealing ink used in Lord Voss's office. Still not proof, but the circle was closing. Hollis Dane remained missing. That night, Atlas refused food. He paced the menagerie wall facing the southern gardens. Titan joined him, all comedy gone from his posture. Their noses lifted toward the storm. Someone was moving near the green cottage. Everard did not release the lions without witnesses. He brought Captain Ormond, 2 guards, and the senior keeper to the menagerie. Linnea signed the exercise record herself. The rain came sideways when they entered the garden. Wind bent the cedar branches and drove water beneath every collar. Atlas moved ahead on a long lead, his nose following a scent across the red clay paths. Titan pulled beside him. For once, he ignored the freedom offered by flower beds, open kitchens, and unattended statuary. The trail led past the glass houses. One door stood open. Inside, broken pots covered the floor. A lantern had been left burning beside a workbench. The flame trembled in the draft. Captain Ormond found rope, a half-empty water jug, and Hollis Dane's missing coat. A dark stain marked one sleeve, but it smelled of lamp oil rather than blood. The lions continued toward the abandoned cottage. Someone held him here, Linnea concluded. Everard handed the lantern to a guard. Rain streamed from his hair. Or wanted us to believe they did. Titan sneezed at the lamp oil and almost extinguished the flame. Ormond moved the lantern beyond his reach. The suspect has attempted darkness. Even Everard smiled briefly. Then Atlas growled toward the trees. A figure ran between the oaks. One guard shifted in motion, landing as a gray wolf. Ormond followed on 2 feet with a speed his age did not suggest. Everard stayed beside Linnea, honoring the choice he had made earlier instead of pursuing the fleeing man. They reached the cottage. Its green door swung in the wind. Fresh cuts scarred the lock. Inside, the hearthstones had been pulled apart. Floorboards lay broken beside a shovel. Whoever searched the room had known evidence existed, but not the exact hiding place. Atlas went to the wall behind the hearth. He pushed his nose beneath a rotted cupboard and shoved. Wood scraped across the floor. A narrow trapdoor appeared beneath it. Linnea's childhood memory returned with sharper force. Her mother lifting the cupboard. Queen Elspeth kneeling beside the opening. A man shouting outside while rain struck the window. Everard opened the trapdoor. A groan came from below. Hollis Dane lay in the shallow root cellar with his wrists tied. He was bruised, hungry, and alive. When Everard lifted him out, the clerk stared at the lions and began laughing weakly. I thought I was about to be eaten. Titan sniffed him, then sat close enough that the rescued clerk reconsidered every dishonest choice he had ever made. You remain under consideration, Linnea told the clerk. Hollis admitted that gambling debts had made him vulnerable. Voss's secretary, Mr. Kelm, paid him to copy the archive key. Hollis believed he was helping steal information for political gossip. After he opened Everard's cabinet, Kelm took the records and brought him to the glass house. Voss appeared there and ordered Hollis held until the summer court ended. The clerk heard them discussing Eleanor's cottage. Kelm moved him beneath it that evening while searching the floor. Hollis had not written the threat to Linnea. He recognized Voss's green office ink and Kelm's narrow handwriting. The mystery now had a living witness. Outside, Captain Ormond returned with the Grey Wolf Guard and a captive. Mr. Kelm had lost one boot in the mud and most of his confidence in the chase. Red clay covered his trousers. A piece of green-stained paper remained inside his coat. He also carried the missing account book, folded beneath his shirt. Everard ordered both men taken to separate guarded rooms. Hollis would receive a healer before questioning continued. Kelm would receive dry clothing because Blackthorne law did not permit pneumonia as an interrogation method. Ormond looked disappointed by the clarification. The cottage still held one secret. Atlas returned to the hearth and scratched at the wall. The sound echoed through Linnea's chest. Titan joined him, digging with enough enthusiasm to cover everyone in damp plaster. Behind a loose stone lay an oilcloth bundle. Linnea pulled it free with shaking hands. A rusted tin box rested inside, sealed with wax bearing Queen Elspeth's private crescent mark. The lid resisted. Everard offered his knife, but Linnea used the shovel blade. The box opened with a thin metallic cry. Letters filled it. Beneath them lay invoices, seal impressions, and 2 original account pages. The first letter began with Eleanor's name. Elspeth wrote that the winter relief accounts were false. Grain purchased for 3 mountain villages had never arrived. Debts against the crown had been manufactured through shell merchants controlled by Voss and 2 other counselors. Eleanor had noticed because the palace laundry received burial cloth requests from villages supposedly supplied with food. She compared those requests with kitchen deliveries and stable routes. Linnea stopped reading. Her mother had uncovered a royal crime through laundry orders, practical observation, and refusal to ignore suffering. No magic had guided her. No noble blood had opened a door. She had simply paid attention. Everard read the next letter aloud in a low voice. Elspeth feared the old Alpha King would dismiss the accusation unless she gathered undeniable proof. Voss had served him for decades and wore loyalty like a second face. The proof came too late. Queen Elspeth fell ill before she could bring the matter to a public council. Believing she might have been poisoned, she ordered Eleanor to take young Linnea and leave. The payment in the green account book was protection money, enough to establish a new life beyond Blackthorne. A third letter identified the official arranging the withdrawal. His name had been scraped from the palace ledger but remained clear here. Lord Roderick Voss. The withdrawal receipt carried Eleanor's forged mark. A second note in Voss's hand ordered a clerk to report that the money had been collected properly. Every missing piece settled into place. Voss had stolen the relief grain and created royal debts. Eleanor discovered the pattern. Elspeth attempted to save her. Voss stole the escape payment, erased Eleanor's position, and expected poverty to destroy her credibility if she ever returned. Linnea unfolded the final letter. The handwriting belonged to her mother. Time had faded the ink, but not the careful shape of each word. Eleanor's letter revealed why she hid the evidence. Voss's men followed them during their escape, and she never knew who inside the palace remained loyal. For years, she waited until Linnea might be safe enough for the truth. Then illness began stealing her memory. She apologized for every cold room, every unpaid doctor, and every bowl of watered soup. She asked Linnea not to remember her as a woman who merely endured misfortune. For one season, Eleanor had fought powerful men and saved families she would never meet. Linnea's vision blurred. She had spent years pitying her mother's weakness. Now she understood the strength hidden inside that frightened silence. A sob broke from her. Everard opened his arms, but he waited until she crossed the space herself. Linnea pressed her face against his wet coat. He held her on the cottage floor while rain struck the roof and wind moved through the broken window. Atlas rested his head across her knees. Titan pushed beneath Everard's arm and licked Linnea's cheek once. Then he tasted the rainwater on Everard's coat and licked that too. "He is comforting us equally," Everard murmured. Linnea laughed through her tears. "He is checking for food." Titan confirmed this by investigating Everard's pocket. The king produced a crushed honey biscuit. Titan swallowed it without chewing, then returned his chin to Linnea's lap with renewed compassion. They remained there until her breathing steadied. Everard read each document again while Ormond catalogued the contents. They wrapped the box in a dry cloak and recorded every person who handled it. The evidence would not disappear a second time. Before leaving, Linnea stood beside the hearth. She imagined Eleanor kneeling in the same place 15 years earlier, one hand on the box and the other holding her feverish daughter. Her mother had hoped truth would outlive fear. It had. Back at the palace, Hollis received broth, blankets, and a lecture from Cook Barda about gambling. The lecture lasted longer than his medical examination. Kelm requested a lawyer. Everard granted one and posted guards who had no interest in copied keys. Voss attempted to leave before dawn. His carriage reached the main gate, where Atlas and Titan were returning under guard. Atlas sat in front of the horses. Titan climbed onto the rear luggage rack and began removing bags. By the time Everard arrived, Voss's shirts covered the road. A locked document case lay beneath Titan's paws. Voss called the seizure illegal. Everard left the case closed and detained the carriage because Voss had attempted to flee during an active criminal inquiry. The neutral Westmere elder reviewed Elspeth's documents, the witness statements, and Voss's attempted departure. She signed a search warrant before sunrise. Captain Ormond opened the case before Voss, his lawyer, and two independent witnesses. It contained payments to Hollis, instructions to Kelm, and correspondence with the merchants named in Elspeth's letters. Titan had discovered the box by accident. The law, rather than the lion, made its contents usable. "That animal is a menace," Voss snapped. Titan sat on one of his hats. "Today," Linnea replied, "he is also efficient." Voss was arrested for theft, coercion, unlawful confinement, destruction of royal records, and conspiracy to steal winter relief funds. His age earned him a chair during questioning, not forgiveness. Everard summoned the summer household to a late breakfast the following morning. It was not a trial. It was a correction delivered to everyone who had consumed the rumor with their tea. That night, Linnea could not sleep. She stood in the old library where the first letter had appeared. A fire burned low, filling the room with cedar smoke. Everard found her beside the neglected bookcase. She admitted that clearing Eleanor's name frightened her almost as much as failing. Once the truth became public, the private mother she remembered would belong to history. Everard understood. He had shared Queen Elspeth with statues, ceremonies, and speeches since childhood. "Keep something for yourself," he advised. "History does not need every part of her." Linnea chose the memory of watered soup. Others might hear it as proof of suffering. She remembered Eleanor adding wild thyme and pretending the thin meal was a fashionable city recipe. Everard smiled. "Was it convincing?" "I was 6. Everything served in a bowl was convincing." He took her hand. His thumb moved over the rough skin across her knuckles. Linnea noticed that he had changed into a dry shirt but missed one button near his throat. "Your Majesty appears improperly assembled." Everard looked down. "My valet was occupied removing lion hair from my formal coat." She fastened the button. His breath changed when her fingers brushed his collar. "That was not necessary," he murmured. "Neither was holding my hand." Linnea left her palm against his chest. "I have not objected." Everard bent and kissed her. A generous policy. The kiss deepened, warm and unhurried. Linnea let the coming morning remain beyond the closed library door. When they finally separated, Linnea rested her forehead beneath his chin. Tomorrow will be less pleasant. Tomorrow may wait outside the library. For several quiet minutes, they allowed it to do exactly that. Tomorrow would ask Linnea to speak before wolves who had spent days judging her mother. Tonight, she allowed herself to smile against the man she loved. The breakfast room smelled of coffee, toasted bread, damp wool, and fear pretending to be appetite. Every summer guest attended. Senior servants stood along the walls because Eleanor's name had been insulted in their corridors as well as noble drawing rooms. Voss was absent. He remained under lawful arrest while an independent criminal counsel examined the charges. Everard refused to turn a family truth into courtroom entertainment. Linnea entered in her plain gray dress. Atlas and Titan walked beside her without leads, then settled near the cold fireplace. Titan faced the breakfast table with disciplined longing. Everard stood at the head of the room. The oilcloth box rested before him beside the recovered account book. He began with the rumor everyone already knew. Eleanor Bell had received a large royal payment before disappearing. That single fact had been used to call her a mistress, a thief, and an extortionist. Then he supplied the facts people had ignored. Queen Elspeth's letters identified Eleanor as her private companion and trusted investigator. Original invoices proved that Voss diverted winter grain through false merchants. The withdrawal order showed he also stole Eleanor's escape money and forged her mark. Hollis and Kelm had given separate statements confirming the recent theft, confinement, threat, and attempt to destroy the surviving evidence. Those statements would be tested in criminal proceedings, not debated over eggs. Cook Barda quietly removed the egg dish from Lord Morcant, who had lost his appetite. Everard invited Linnea to speak only if she wished. She stepped beside the oilcloth box. Her knees felt weak, but her voice did not. Linnea told the room that her mother had been poor, ill, and frightened. None of those things made her dishonest. Eleanor had noticed missing village supplies because burial cloth requests did not match the palace's cheerful delivery reports. She had followed ordinary details until they revealed extraordinary cruelty. My mother did not receive a fortune for betraying this house, Linnea stated. She lost it because she protected this house. Several nobles lowered their eyes. Lady Beatrice, whose skirt had begun the summer's gossip, folded her fan and kept it closed. Linnea admitted entering the first records room without permission. She did not make herself flawless to make her mother innocent. That choice was improper, she continued. It was not theft. Poverty was not theft either. Celestine rose before anyone asked her to. She admitted receiving the anonymous transcript and spreading its suggestion. She had wanted a laundry maid removed from the king's attention, so she treated uncertainty as proof. I believed preparation entitled me to a crown, Celestine confessed. When it did not, I punished a woman who had promised me nothing. Her apology contained no excuse. Linnea accepted the words but did not manufacture instant forgiveness for the comfort of the room. Celestine understood. She removed her name from the Luna selection herself. Mrs. Crowell stepped forward next. Her keys trembled at her waist as she finally broke Queen Elspeth's order of silence. 15 years earlier, armed men searched Blackthorne for Eleanor. Mrs. Crowell hid mother and daughter in the gardener's cottage until a cart carried them beyond the pack boundary. Then she told the part no ledger held. Atlas and Titan had arrived that winter as starving cubs. They rejected every keeper, bit through feeding cloths, and complained with surprising volume for animals so weak. Eleanor slept beside them. She fed them milk a few drops at a time and warmed them under her cloak. Young Linnea recovered from fever in the same room, with one cub pressed against each foot. After Eleanor fled, the lions searched the palace for days. They remembered her scent for 15 years. When adult Linnea entered the laundry, they recognized Eleanor's blood before anyone recognized Eleanor's name. Atlas rose. He crossed the breakfast room and pressed his forehead against Linnea's hip, repeating the first morning exactly. Titan joined him. He pushed his face into her apron, then glanced toward the toast without weakening the emotional point completely. A wet laugh escaped Mrs. Crowell. Several servants wiped their eyes. The nobles who had repeated the ugliest rumors now faced a poor woman, 2 remembering lions, and evidence that did not care about rank. Everard restored Eleanor Bell's name to the royal household record before breakfast ended. Her position would read companion to Luna Queen Elspeth and protector of the winter villages. He did not offer Linnea a ceremonial office in front of an audience. Later, in private, she chose to remain the royal lion keeper and help Mrs. Crowell establish rest houses in Eleanor's name. Both roles carried clear wages. Everard had learned that romance did not exempt him from discussing employment properly. The Independent Criminal Council completed its work during the following month. Voss's own correspondence, the original accounts, and 3 separate witnesses supported the charges. His property repaid the affected villages and Eleanor's stolen settlement. Hollis and Kelm received reduced penalties for cooperation, although Cook Barda considered her lecture to Hollis an additional sentence. The public breakfast ended without a verdict announcement, a ceremonial key, or a lawyer losing his glove. It ended when Titan placed both front paws on an empty chair and waited for someone to serve him toast. Celestine left Blackthorne that afternoon. Her carriage waited beside the steps where Lady Prunella's ruined ribbon had begun the summer. Linnea came to see her depart, flanked by both lions. Celestine acknowledged that Linnea had been fortunate. Yes, Linnea agreed. My mother was braver than the people who buried her. I was fortunate to discover it. Celestine looked at Atlas and Titan. And fortunate in your friends. Celestine extended one gloved hand toward Titan. The lion considered it, then sat beside Linnea instead. The rejection was quiet. Celestine accepted it without anger. He has better judgment than I did, she acknowledged. He has had more practice, Linnea replied. Celestine entered her carriage with her dignity intact and fewer illusions than she had brought. As it rolled away, Atlas remained beside Linnea, while Titan watched the wheels disappear. The following weeks restored Eleanor Bell to Blackthorne's history. Her name returned to the household register as companion to Queen Elspeth. The recovered money supported winter healers and safe lodging along the mountain roads. Linnea remained the royal lion keeper. She also worked beside Mrs. Crowell to turn the green cottage into the first lodging house, without acquiring a grand office or a title longer than its duties. Their courtship became public during the repairs. This did not end gossip. It improved its accuracy. Everard joined the scheduled morning handling sessions and helped at the cottage whenever royal work allowed. He was poor at plaster, worse at hanging shelves, and excellent at reaching beams no one else could reach. At last, Linnea told him one rainy afternoon, a royal qualification. Everard held a ceiling hook above his head. My reign has found its purpose. Atlas supervised from the hearth. Titan occupied the exact floorboard a carpenter needed to replace. 4 polite requests, 1 firm command, and a personal appeal from the carpenter produced no movement. Linnea brought Titan's old sleeping blanket from the palace and placed it near the repaired wall. The lion moved at once, proving that he understood cooperation but preferred favorable terms. The cottage opened before the first winter frost. Several noble donors arrived with objects chosen for appearance rather than usefulness. One sent a gilded chair too narrow for an injured wolf. Another provided a crystal chandelier that nearly touched the low ceiling. Lady Beatrice contributed a marble plaque weighing more than Titan. The wording praised royal generosity and forgot to mention Eleanor. Linnea returned it for correction. Everard read the original inscription. It mentions me 4 times. That is 3 times too many. Everard studied the corrected wording. You would permit one? On the list of people forbidden to choose furniture. The corrected plaque carried only Eleanor's name and a simple sentence about shelter offered without questions. Traveling healers brought the useful things: hooks for wet cloaks, sturdy blankets, a kettle that did not leak, a cabinet whose doors opened without royal intervention. The first guests were 2 exhausted women returning from a mountain fever camp. They expected a formal reception and found Linnea warming soup beside the same hearth where Eleanor once hid the evidence. Atlas lay in his old place near the fire. Titan tested the narrow guest bench, heard it creak, and stepped away with rare wisdom. The senior healer recognized Eleanor's name. She had been a young apprentice during the Stolen Relief winter and remembered receiving clean burial cloth after food wagons failed to arrive. She did not offer Linnea a new clue or another secret. She simply confirmed that Eleanor's attention had reached people who never knew who sent help. That was enough. After the guests settled, snow began outside the green door. It softened the old garden and caught in Atlas's black mane. Everard found Linnea beneath the cottage eaves. He wrapped one side of his cloak around her without asking her to abandon her own. The chandelier is being returned tomorrow, he reported. A decisive king. Everard watched Titan circle the offending fixture indoors. I feared Titan might wear it. Linnea leaned into his warmth. He would improve it. Everard looked through the open door at the healers drinking soup. Your mother would be proud. The words no longer reopened grief. They settled beside it. Linnea turned toward him. She would ask why the king is standing in snow without a hat. I hoped you might warm me. That excuse is almost honest. Linnea brushed snow from his shoulder. His smile warmed before the rest of him did. I have been training. His arm tightened gently around her. Linnea touched his collar. Continue at this pace, and you may become almost tolerable before spring. Everard considered the remaining winter. I appreciate your confidence in my rapid improvement. She kissed him beneath the eaves. Snow whispered through the ivy, while warmth gathered beneath Everard's cloak. Their public life remained imperfect, affectionate, and busy. Neither wanted it polished into anything less honest. 3 months after the breakfast gathering, both lions settled stubbornly in the rose court. They sat beside the fountain where Lady Prunella's courtship ribbon had met its end. Evening lanterns glowed beneath the bare climbing roses, and frost brightened the paving stones. Linnea arrived wearing her practical blue wool dress and a coat warm enough for scents. Mrs. Krell had summoned her with the claim that the lions were behaving strangely. That description covered most days. Atlas held one end of a white courtship ribbon between his teeth. Titan held the other. The silk stretched between them without a tear, tooth mark, or smear of dinner. After 13 ruined presentations, the sight looked more supernatural than any wolf transformation. Linnea stopped at the court entrance. Where did they get that? Everard stepped from beneath the covered walk. He wore a plain black coat and no ceremonial crown. His smile carried more nerves than any battle report had ever produced. I gave it to them. Linnea examined the intact ribbon again. Voluntarily? The decision has caused me several difficult minutes. Titan's jaw tightened around the silk. Atlas made a warning sound without releasing his end. Titan relaxed, corrected by the only authority he consistently respected. Everard crossed the court and stopped before Linnea. He did not kneel, summon witnesses, or ask the lions to make his choice for him. Instead, he offered her his bare wrist. The old Luna ritual required a candidate to offer her wrist to the king's wolf. Everard reversed it. His pulse rested beneath Linnea's fingers, warm and steady. No council arranged this, he told her. No law requires it, and no animal will decide your answer. His wolf rose beneath his skin without aggression. Gold warmed his eyes as he continued. He had noticed Linnea because two impossible lions recognized her. He had loved her because she challenged him without cruelty, trusted him without surrender, and kept choosing truth when silence would have been safer. She had shown him that protection required permission. She had also shown him that a king could survive being corrected before breakfast. The second lesson remains under review, Linnea murmured. Relief softened his mouth. I expected continued instruction. Everard opened his other hand. A gold ring rested on his palm, set with a small moonstone rather than silver. Linnea Bell, will you marry me? Her eyes stung. The question contained no bargain about rank, no command from his wolf, and no debt between their families. It was simply his choice offered to hers. Linnea let him wait long enough to remember every evaluation she had threatened. Will the position include separate wages? Everard's smile transformed his face. Name your price. 1 honest king, 2 supervised lions, the right to refuse ornamental shoes. Everard answered without hesitation. Granted. Then yes, Everard, I will marry you. He lifted her ringed hand. For clarity, refusing ornamental shoes remains valid after coronation. Linnea smiled through her tears. For clarity, so does correcting you before breakfast. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Linnea drew him close by the front of his coat and kissed him beneath the lanterns. The kiss was warm and certain. When they separated, Atlas approached with the white ribbon still held gently in his mouth. He placed his end across their joined hands. Titan brought the other end. For one remarkable moment, both lions allowed the ribbon to remain perfect. Then Titan opened his jaws wider. Atlas planted one heavy paw over the loose silk before his brother could bite it. Titan looked offended. Atlas looked like a guardian who had waited 15 years for the household to become sensible. Linnea laughed against Everard's shoulder. They approve, the king murmured. Atlas approves. Titan is negotiating. Everard kissed her once more while the white ribbon rested unbroken across their hands. The lions had destroyed every courtship built from duty. This one, chosen freely, they allowed to remain whole. Thank you for listening to Moonlit Romance Tales. I hope this story brought you a little laughter, warmth, and a peaceful moment in a world that can sometimes feel heavy. If you enjoyed this tale, please like, subscribe, and share it to spread more happiness. I'll see you in the next one.